Right, welcome to another episode of the Old Paratrooper podcast. And today I am joined with SBS veteran and double world record holder, the legend that is Dean Stott. How you doing, pal? All right?
Hey, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
Really well, thank you.
Good.
It's,
I appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure to. Well, no problems, mate. I appreciate you taking the time to come on. I know you're kind of really busy with bits and bobs. So, look, I just appreciate you taking the time out and coming and sitting and having an hour with me to chat about a few things. So, what I kind of do with all the podcasts, like to start at the beginning, get a bit of a background about yourself, kind of where you grew up, and the path you took, and what led you down the kind of military route, and all things associated. So, yeah, over to you, pal.
Yeah, so I was born into a military family. My dad was in the Royal Engineers. My grandparents were in the military, and so as you know, being a PADS brat, you'd move every 3 years. But I only really started remembering that Bradford, my old man, was posted to a TA unit as a regular. My sister was born in Germany, and then we went to Aldershot, which you will all know, home in the British Army. And so I went to school. Aldershot, you got Gun Hill, you got Talavera School. I went to school there. And then not long after arriving in Aldershot, my parents split up. My mum was from Manchester. And just one morning, I was 8 years old, New Year's Day, and she grabbed me and my sisters and just took us out of the house, put us on a train, and we all went to Manchester. And then, not knowing what was going on, when we got there, she told us that she'd left my father, and that was us now living in Manchester. So to get on the housing market, or to get a council house, you had to be homeless. So we ended up in a homeless home in Moss Side in Manchester.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was, as you know, it was probably one of the roughest estates in the country. My old man at this point was Squadron Sergeant Major down at Gibraltar Barracks in Minley. And so every 2 weeks, he would travel from Aldershot up to Manchester, grab us and take us down for a bit of respite, really. Because, me and my sisters being the only Caucasian kids in the school, it wasn't long before I was scrapping. Yeah, I got kicked out of that school and then got sent to another school in Fallowfield. But going back down to Aldershot with my dad, I could just be a child again. Fast forward 2 years, and he got promoted to RSM and was posted to Germany, but turned down that to stay in UK and fight for custody. And 2 years later, the judge said, look, the kids will make the decision. I'm not splitting up the siblings. They make the choice. And I was the oldest at 10 years old. And I was close to my dad. So I chose my dad. And yeah, the judge agreed with my decision. And then my father then took us back down to Aldershot. We were there about another year, actually. I went to school in North Camp, Wavell, where obviously that's where the balloon is and the Red Devils take off. So very much immersed in that airborne environment. And then my father did his 22 years, and we moved not far from Aldershot to Surrey, a little village called Elstead. And that's when the sort of military PADS brat thing was pushed behind us. We started a whole new, I went to secondary school and started a whole new fresh. There was no fighting, and it could be a child again. My father used to take us surfing every summer holiday to Newquay. And so I really had a fondness for the water. And I always wanted to be a fireman. But when I finished school in 93, there was a recession. There was like 2,000 applicants for one job in Surrey, in Guildford. And so I went to Newquay for a 2 weeks holiday with my pals and ended up staying there for 6 months. Ended up starting off as silver service waiter and then working in a surf shop. So my old man came looking for me 6 months later, found me in this surf shop and told me that I'd wasted my education and what was I going to do with my life. And so for me, I thought, well, I'll join the military. My thought process was, as you know, perfect example. Most military guys go on to either law enforcement, fire, or emergency response, and your pension can carry on. And I thought, well, if I join the military, get 3 years, it will help with my CV and help me get a foot in the door with the fire brigade. My dad told me I'd last 2 minutes as we're driving home, which, for me, now looking at it, probably reverse psychology. But, the best course of action was action itself. So Monday morning, he was, I don't know if you know Aldershot, there's where the careers office is, the old wooden careers office there. My old man used to work now for the MOD about 400 meters away. And I just walked in on the Monday morning, and I actually was going to join the parachute regiment. I came back out, went over to my old man's office. I said, oh, I'm joining. He said, what are you joining? I said, parachute regiment. He goes, you're bloody not. And he marched me straight back in. But my old man, just so your listeners are aware, my old man was like the Ted Lasso of the army. He was the army soccer manager, player, and coach. So his career he was a tracksuit soldier. So he was literally, so I had no real understanding of the formations of the organizations within the military. I'd seen the parachute regiment, never even heard of the Royal Marines, never even heard of the SBS, didn't even know about special forces because he didn't really talk about it. That wasn't his career. So he then said, well, look, you have 9 squadron who are airborne engineers. So my dad's thinking, get a trade and leave the military, which I thought, okay. So that was the first time I heard about 9 squadron, and he told me about 5-9 commando. They also have reconnaissance troops, so you can get your wings. So I went back into the careers office, joined the engineers, and did the old touchscreen test. And they're like, right, you can choose whatever trade you want. And back in 1994, this was probably late 94, they were like, there was no Afghan or Iraq. So I was thinking, what would the girls be impressed with? I thought bomb disposal sounds good. So I applied for bomb disposal. I went back to my dad's office. I said, I'm going bomb disposal. He said, you're bloody not. And he marched me straight back in again. So although he said I would last 2 minutes, he was very useful in those early stages, just guiding me on the right path within the engineers. And I ended up being a plant fitter, a plant operating mechanic in the end. Because it was an A trade, you got more money, he was thinking bigger picture. So that was my foot into the military.
Yeah, no, fair play. I mean, it is, and like I'm trying to advise my lad a little bit the same. It's like I have obviously a massive amount of respect and admiration for the parachute regiment. It was my unit, and as you will do, like with the ethos and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to think. You think I don't want my lad to necessarily go down that route. The trade bit is it good? So obviously your old man was thinking the same, wasn't he? Thinking about weighing up for when you come out, you set yourself up. Because let's be honest, you come out of an infantry unit or an elite infantry unit, like, I don't know, the Marines or the Paras, you've got very little options unless it's security world, haven't you?
True. Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, that's what I mean. He was thinking long-term rather than short-term. So yeah, I always appreciate him doing that. So, but yeah, it helped me. And I joined in February 95, and I was 5'7" and weighed about 130 pounds. I could see why he thought I would last 2 minutes. And, I didn't have any aspirations of going commando or airborne units or anything else. I just wanted to get through training. Got through the basic training, was in like the top 25%. I then went to Gibraltar Barracks, came in like the top 10%. So each time I was doing courses, I was physically, I was growing, but mentally I was getting stronger. And I thought, my first posting actually, when I finished, was 2-8 Engineer Regiment in Germany, because they were the army. They found out that my dad was Dave Stott as the army soccer manager coach. And they're like, oh, you're Dave's lad. So they flew me to Germany because they were the army soccer champions. And so I went out to Germany for the first year at the age of 18. And as soon as I turned up, my troop staff sergeant was like, right, you're a kiss baller, as he called us kiss ballers. He goes, you're going to be a gym queen. So I ended up going straight onto my PTI course within a couple of months. I got flown back. I know there's a PTI course in Germany, and messed up, flew me all the way back to Aldershot to do my PTI course. But my first year at 2-8 Engineer Regiment was literally work in the gym, but every morning, 8 o'clock, we'd parade on the AstroTurf and play soccer all day, play football all day until lunchtime. And then on Wednesday, you have a game. So these guys were like, a couple of players went on to play for Celtic, some went professional. So it was almost like a stepping stone for them. But after about 9 months, I was like, I'm just mirroring my dad's career. I was now getting a lot stronger in the gym, getting a bit more confident in my abilities. And so I looked at 9 Squadron and 5-9. And the only reason I decided to choose 5-9 Commando over 9 Squadron is I'd lived in Aldershot. And you join the military to see new things and see new places. I had a lot of friends in 9 Para. And so, yeah, I then volunteered for the All Arms Commando course. But just before I was going on my All Arms Commando course, the squadron that I was attached to in Germany, they just come back from Northern Ireland. and they had like a welcome back party for the families, and they had it in a Naffy bar on camp. But at the time, there was a pioneer course, an assault pioneer course, and they had some Fusiliers in there, and they'd basically been gated from downtown because they'd been causing trouble. So they were in the Naffy bar this night, and a few of them were sort of bad mouthing the wives, making rude comments, and so me and my mate ended up scrapping them. I ended up going to Colchester prison for 56 days.
Really?
Yeah, for that. So, but it wasn't. So I did. We had the fight. The police then came and arrested us, and they're like, So I was like, well, I'm on my commander course. So they flew me straight back to UK. I started we have a 4-week beat up at 5'9", and then on the second week, the training team pulled me in. They said, "You've got to go back to Germany next week for an ID parade." Flew back to Germany. The guy who was with me, his brother was in the squadron. He managed to, they didn't even pick him out. But me, I was the gym PT. I had big ears, and they're like, yeah, it's him. So I got positively ID'd, flew straight back to UK, finished the beat up, and did the All Arms Commander course. Finished the 10 weeks commander course. When we finished that, we got our green berets. We went back to the squadron, and 5'9" Commando now we're in Northern Ireland as well on a tour. And the admin officer was like, "All right, you guys are going across the water." So I'm like, "Perfect. I'm off to Northern Ireland." He said, "Not you, Stott." He goes, "You're going back." He goes, "You have to go for a court martial." So I went back, having done my commander course, went straight back to Germany. And I could have gone court martial, and it could have taken about a year to 18 months and probably got away with it. But in the end, I just pleaded guilty because I just wanted it done and dusted. I'd just done the commander course. I wanted to start afresh. So I went in, and the actual commanding, the CO was X9 Squadron, and I got marched in by the RSM, and he goes, because they all knew actually that these guys caused the trouble. Everyone knew it wasn't our fault, and so they were a bit relaxed on us. So the RSM marches me in, and the RSM I played football with anyway, so he was a good friend. And the commanding officers are like, "Right, Sapper Stott, I was going to give you 60 days, but because you've just done the commander course, I'm taking 4 days off." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." He goes, "Any questions?" I said, "Yeah. If I had gone 9 Squadron, would I have got more days off?" And he sort of, he chuckled anyway. And that was me on my way. Went to Colchester prison, did my time there, and then went straight to 5'9" Commando. And the admin officer who I talked about earlier on, he pulled me in, and he just ripped up the report, threw it in the bin, and said, "This is a fresh new start."
Oh, that's good then. They kind of give you that fresh new start. I've not spoke to anyone. I know a few lads that have been in sort of military prison. What was military prison like? Because you hear a lot of rumours, and I've heard the rumours. Was it as tough as everyone says, or?
No, it's actually, so when you turn up, you get escorted to the it's called the glass house. You get escorted to the glass house, and when you turn up, they're screaming and shouting like this. But what they're doing is they're leaving an impression on those that are escorting you to then go back and say, "You do not want to go there. That place is horrendous." As soon as I got sent through, I got taken to the ward, your wing, and there's wings. There's those for 28 days and under, those for 28 days and over, and then those that are actually going to get discharge as well. So there's 3 set wings. So I went in, I arrived in the evening from Germany, and they're like, gave me a newspaper and a donut and said, "Right, we'll start processing here tomorrow." But I went in, and I have an OCD anyway, so I like things to be like neat and stuff like that. So I loved all that about it. We did PT twice a day. I was learning about infantry stuff that I'd never touched before in the engineers, more reconnaissance stuff. And for me, the only downside to being in Colchester prison is you only get £9.18 a week, I think it was. That was it. Your wages
Right.
if you have a mortgage and things like that, the military cover that, but I didn't have. I was a young sapper. And so, and that's, you buy your brasso, you buy your washing powder, and if you've got a bit of, maybe some stamps and some candy, or some guys, if they smoke, can buy that. So that was the only downside to it. And when I left, I was like, I'd have stayed. If they paid me full time, I would have stayed, because I was loving it. I was staying fit. I was learning so much about the military. And it used to be, in days of old, that guys would come back to their units and get promoted, because literally they'd learned so much in that period of time. But then they had to sort of nip that in the bud, because it's like, well, no, it needs to be a punishment, not a promotion. A promotion tour. It's almost like doing a kata. So for me, you know, I didn't mind, you know, really appreciated just the basics in life. So you have room inspections every day, about twice a day. And then on Monday morning, you have the OC's room inspection. And he then makes the decision which is the best room. And the best room gets the radio in the evening. So you get radio for 2 hours, 7 o'clock at night, you get radio for 2 hours, you got your donut, you got your newspaper. And it's really, really interesting to see how just something as basic as a radio brings your morale up as well. So yeah, no, that was it. That was my time in Collie.
Yeah, no, fair play. Well, like I say, I've not heard anyone come back and say they actually enjoyed it and would have stayed. So that's a first. So fair play. So yeah, after that, you obviously went back to your unit. And so what sort of tours did you get sent on while you were with kind of that unit?
So in a short, so when I got back, they were just finishing that Northern Ireland tour, and so I went straight on my diving course. So in the engineers, we have divers, and that's an ADQUAL. And so normally there's a waiting list. So I was like, right place, right time. Just got straight back, went straight on the diving course. The squadron came back, and I mean, you know, you're hearing about these squadron bullies and guys that, you know, they've heard about. Yeah. So the first time I met them was at a Christmas party, and the 5'9" boxing team came over. So 5'9" were the minor units boxing champions in UK. And they're like, oh, one of the lads sort of hit me across the face. And, you know, so I hit him back, and he's like, I just wanted to know what you would do. You know, I was like, okay. And we had, and we would always, because 5'9" would win it, the boxing, the unit boxing, they automatically go to the final. And then other units would fight off to get to the final. 9 squadron were always our opponents. So it was always 5'9", 9 squad. It was a huge thing. So as of the January, you know, this is December. As of January, I'm thrown on the boxing team. I'm like, I've done boxing before. Like, you're in the boxing team because of the Colchester thing. And then 3 months later, I'm fighting for the squadron at what was I, light heavyweight, sorry. No, middleweight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, middleweight for that one, because I was fluctuating my weights. And the and actually 9 squadron never made that one that year. It was actually a pioneer regiment, and I knocked the guy down 3 times in the first round, and that was it, end of fight. So, but that was the reason I explained that. There was a lot of ex-5'9" guys from other units all at this event. You know, it's at the Maida gym in Aldershot. It's huge, and so really that was the first time the 5'9" guys got to see who I was. And so it's a great impression when you knock the guy down 3 times. And that really helped me then. And then we went on to, you know, that time we did med tours, Caribbean tours, and we went to Norway. And then we have reconnaissance troop within 5'9". So 5'9" Commander Royal Engineers. And reconnaissance troop is part of the Brigade Reconnaissance Force, or Brigade Patrol Troop. It's like the PF Pathfinders. So they work with 148 Battery, the naval gunfire, artillery, and they also work with the mountain leaders and the snipers from Brigade Patrol Troop with the Marines. And so I got identified to go to Recce Troop. So within a year, I was in a reconnaissance troop, then went on my jumps course. And when the first tour we went on was Kosovo in 99. But this was quite important because it was the first tour for Recce Troop since the Falklands War. You know, so that was good. So we ended up doing 6 months in, you know, did my jumps course, then went straight out there, 6 months with Brigade Reconnaissance Force out in Kosovo.
Yeah, the Kosovo thing was a kind of a first for a lot, wasn't it? Because obviously there was, up until then, obviously the Falklands 82, and then you had Northern Ireland kind of tours. So when that kicked off, it was kind of sort of exciting, wasn't it? And I remember seeing, I think it was 1 and 3 para that went from the parachute battalions, and 2 para never went because I'm sure we were in Ireland. So we were all mortified that they got sent on that. But yeah, it was like a big deal, the whole Kosovo thing, wasn't it? How did you find the tour? Was it good for soldiering and stuff like that?
Yeah, it was great for us. We had some great tasks. You know, we were working on the border. We were trying to doing a lot of surveillance OPs for Puffwicks. I remember one real standout for us was there was a buffer zone about 5K between Serbia, Serbia and Kosovo, and basically no one was allowed in there. And there was a militia training camp in there. So we spent 4 weeks, dug in the snow in the Arctic, just observing, sending all the information back, and that then eventually became an SF camp attack. They just wiped it out completely. Because Serbians were like that to the UN, you need to do something or we won't. But one real standout was the very, very first op we went on. And, as I said, it's the first op since the Falklands War. And you want to impress the Marines, you want to obviously impress the peers of old in Recce Troop. And we're out on the ground and we basically get dropped off and we have to sort of march in. And we're carrying all this kit with us. And they're taking all this camera kit off the shelf. It wasn't even ruggedized for military, because for us to use in a court of law, the evidence, it had to be wet film, couldn't be digital film back in 99. And so we had these big lenses. We're carrying a lot of stuff. We land down and we're walking in, and I'm the lead scout and we're rotating positions, and we could hear this like rustling, almost like someone slowly creeping. Every time we did a silent start, it was someone slowly creeping. And so we're like stood too. We're like, herringbone position. Everyone's looking through their scopes. Anyway, this went on for like 2 weeks. We got into the OP position and we could still hit in the OP position. So we got zero sleep, I think. We got limited sleep because we're like, so when we came back in and we had the debrief with the ops officer and you had the intel team there, they're like, any issues? And I said, I can't confirm we've been compromised, but we felt like there was sort of a presence there. There was someone, walking around in the leaves, but we didn't see anything. I mean, one of the int guys, green slime as he's he's like, oh yeah, I did forget to tell you, it's breeding season for the tortoises, so they're coming out. So they literally had these like horny tortoises just fucking getting it on, and we're like stood too for like 2 weeks. So for me, it was real insight into questions to ask for the future when you're on ops.
Yeah, no, definitely, mate. Yeah, definitely. I've heard of a lot of guys about that tour because it wasn't massively kinetic, was it? There was bits and bops that happened. I remember there was a few skirmishes with one of the parachute battalions and stuff like that. Yeah. But I think the kind of overall kind of opinion of it was like exactly what you said. It was good for getting out and honing your soldiering skills out, doing OPs, kind of actually proper soldiering. Because again, prior to that, all the guys had done really was Northern Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, like I said, my father, he'd done Northern Ireland, and it just between the Falklands and them, there was nothing going on. But yeah, for us was some great stuff. Another standout one was we had to pick up a bomb maker. There'd been a bomb maker who'd been making the bombs and the IEDs, and he was linked to one of the Terps that was working on the camp. So we ended up going there, with the vehicles, we door kicked, and first, shock and awe when you capture these people. You don't have any conversations with them at all. And so we get the guys grab him. Me and my mate are in the back of this Land Rover, and they throw him in the back. And he's handcuffed with his hands behind his back, and he's trying to look up. And I just stick my the foot in the back of his neck just to keep his head down, because I didn't want to see him where we're going. And he in the Mancunian accent, he's that's fucking bang out of order. And I'm like, hang on, this bomb maker's from the UK. Wow. So we ended up dropping them off at a secret location. As you go in, there's the white lights on the little chair in the middle. Yeah, and just dropped him off. So, but yeah, again, it was first sort of insight to me, other than what we do in training or what you've read before, of actually being on ops, which was cool.
So being part of that kind of reconnaissance sort of environment, do you think that's what almost got you kind of a little bit of a taste to want to go down the SF route?
Yeah, it was. We were very fortunate in Recce Troop that we had 100% pass rate on selection. So all the guys from Recce Troop ended up going on and passing. I then went to on the All Arms training team. I was on the Commando Course training team, and then did that for a year. Then came back to Recce Troop. So I went from sapper to sergeant. I did 8 years in one troop, which is unheard of. So majority of my time was there, and it was also with Free Commander Brigade and with the Marines and things like that. So when I decided I was going to go on selection, normally you'd go the SAS route, but they literally just opened the doors now, try service. They decided, because the SBS realized that you can, for the SAS, any Marine can go join the SAS. Anyone from any unit can go join the SAS. The SBS was only Royal Marines only, but they were losing a pool of guys to SAS because some guys don't like diving. It's an alien environment. And by which time now I was I had to get posted out after 8 years. My sergeant major said, "Stop, you've got to go." And so I had my joining instructions for PF, and
Right.
yeah, so I was literally about to go PF. And I remember sergeant majors, can't you see the wood through the trees? They wanted me to leave to better my career, come back and be the staff sergeant for Recce Troop, whereas I just wanted to go on ops. And so but then Glasgow, who did the manning and records, that very same day, an email came through or a call that I had to go to the dive school. So I came top of my diving supervisors course the year before, and they were losing. There was a few deaths in the diving in the military diving community, more with the Navy than the Army. So health and safety wise, they introduced this whole new diving system. So to keep the courses going, they had to bring a whole new team in to train up the already trained 400 divers. So I was a senior diving instructor for that. So when I got there, I then decided, right, I'm going on selection. But I wanted to go SBS, but purely because I'd spent 8 years with Free Commander Brigade. I loved being in the water. I did both briefing courses, actually. I did go to Hereford and did their briefing course for a week. And then the following week went down to Poole and did theirs. And both units are amazing. The real standout for me with Poole was, the lads at Hereford were in the alley junglies, which was cool. But then when I went down to Poole, they're all in frog t-shirts, shorts, Oakleys and reefs. I was like, yeah, that's me. That's me.
Yeah. The surfing atmosphere there, right?
The surfing atmosphere. It was just more of a natural fit. But yeah, much to the disgust of my friends in SAS, that I went down that route. When I started selection, they tell you to be the grey man, and the grey man, don't bring any attention to yourself for negative or positive reasons. Try and fly under the radar. Because we started with 208 passed in the end, and so they will see who you are. But day one of selection, we sat on our Bergens on the parade square, and then I hear my name gets called out. I was like, oh. So I stood up, and there was a guy called Nasty Nick, who was ex-9 Squadron, and then another guy who's ex-5-9 as well. I won't give out his name for obvious reasons. And they were like, why are you going Poole? And I was like, oh, because I like diving. They're like, shit answer. I mean, that's so straight away, day one, I was exposed. My cards were already marked, but I stuck with it. I remember doing the hills phase, and I used to go up the hill, and these two DS would be in their tent together every day. And you get there, and you put your rifle on your feet. You give them your position, and they tell you your next location. And they used to always say to me, why are you going SBS? I said, like diving. No, that shit answer, grab a rock. So they give me a rock to put in my Bergen, and this went on for about 2 weeks, and I'm like, this isn't going to happen. So I went home for the weekend, Googled Bournemouth Beach, and it was Bournemouth Beach heat wave, and it was in the Sun newspaper, and it was like topless women sunbathing on the beach. So I printed that off, fabloned it, and put it in my mat pocket. Monday morning, I get up the hill, the two DS are there, and they're like, right then, so why are you going SBS? So I put the weapon on my foot, and I took out this fablon bit, this picture, and I said, because that's not in Hereford. And they laughed out loud. They said, good answer. And from that moment on, I never had to carry a rock. So yeah, they also testing your like humor as well. But I kept that in my mat pocket for the next 6 months. It never left my side.
Yeah, no, fair play, mate. That's good. Yeah, I suppose it's about having humour in the face of adversity, which is something we do. British Army, the military, and everything else. That is our thing, isn't it? When the chips are down, we still keep that sense of humour, and that's worldwide. People see that about the Brits as well, don't they?
Yeah, and the thing is, with the guys, it wasn't the fact that they didn't like SBS, because there were other instructors there from the SBS. they were worried about the message it could probably put out for future guys going, that they, because they're potentially losing guys from 5'9" recce troop, 100% pass rate, oh, if Stotty's gone SBS, I might do that. And actually, the next 5 guys from the engineers who went on selection all went SBS as well. And then it started balancing out again. But that was just purely, and that wasn't because I went SBS at all. At the time, SAS were running Iraq and SBS were running Afghanistan. That was their operational areas. And so as as Iraq started tapering, lads wanted to go to Afghanistan. And as you know, we have SF support group. And what they did is they stopped the parachute regiment with the SBS and the Marines with the SAS. And so what it was doing, the parachute regiment guys were getting exposure to seeing what the SBS guys were doing. And they're like, yeah, I want a bit of this. So it was actually that was a natural recruitment drive as well, just purely because they worked with us as well. So it wasn't because I'd broken the mold. It was just that time in life. That was all.
Yeah, no, my best mate, who I joined the Reg with, I've known him since we were 8 years of age. He was probably one of 3 at the time that's ever done it, and he went from Power Reg to SBS, and he served in Poole, and he's left now. He's kind of, but yeah, he got no end of stick from the lads in 2-2 and from the lads in Power Reg. He's like, why have you gone down to Poole? And he was like, well, it's a bit different, isn't it? And the diving bit and all that. But he thoroughly enjoyed his time down there, apart from working with Marines. But you can't win them all, can you?
You can't win them all. I think to me, well, I was almost like the guinea pig, because we were told when I went, and this was wrong of SBS, like, yeah, we're tri-service. And when I got there, remember the JPA system that they introduced? So the Navy tried the JPA system before the Army did. And so when I went down there, I'm like typing in my JPA 2508. It was like, so I couldn't get SF pay. So every month I would have to go up to 148 battery, who are based on our camp, to an Army unit and draw my SF pay from there. So there was loads of issues as well. And then I was like I said, I did selection as a sergeant, and then went back down to first they said I was going to be a Marine. I was like, well, no, I'm a trooper. And so I went back down to trooper, and then they're like, oh, you need to go do your juniors, like your corporal cadre with the Marines. I was an instructor years ago at Limston.
Yeah.
And so I ended up printing off what we do in the Royal Engineers for our cadres and what they do in the Marines. And ours was a lot higher. And I said to him, I said, look, if you send me on that juniors, no one from the Army will come through these gates as in recruitment. And so, yeah, there was really a lot of back and forth of understanding, and more for them to understand that actually, we have our own cadres and they're very high quality as well, if not probably better than theirs. And so, yeah, there was a lot of that back and forth each way. But again, I was almost like the guinea pig for the start.
Yeah, it has. And it's like weird back because I joined not too many years after you. I joined 97. And I remember kind of the guys talking about it. Like you say, you have these closed different things. But certainly as the conflicts increased with Iraq and Afghanistan, I think it started to open up under the kind of bracket of UKSF, didn't it? And it was more like a kind of more joint than it was separate, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the origins of that stem from the Falklands. So during the Falklands, you had the SAS and the SBS, and the only fatality the SBS had was a blue on blue with the SAS. And that's why guys of the old boys, they don't get on the SAS and SBS. They're still very bitter. But as years have gone on, they've sort of diluted, and they're out of the military now. And obviously post Falklands, they're like, well, we need to know where the SAS are and the SBS, and they formed Director Special Forces. And then that's why they then did selection together. So now you're on selection with guys SAS and SBS. So that they've done the same course as you. There's no separate courses. And, some of my best friends are still in the SAS. So you have that mutual respect. So that sort of rivalry of old is sort of dissipated. It's gone. It's gone because now one squadron from SBS will always work with one squadron from the SES, especially when we're doing the black role. So you have to have that cross-pollination.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I thought you say I think they kind of work hand in hand now, don't they? Again, I think SFSG's kind of that's the same with the Marines and Paras, isn't it? And SFSG's done a lot to kind of do the same sort of thing, exclude, out of SF that the kind of because they work together now in SFSG, don't they? So it's and that probably is part of it as well, with them working together and getting to know the Marines and Marines and Paras. It's probably why guys are now going on SBS and going on sort of SES from all sorts of people, And they opened PF as well, didn't they, to other units? Because Pathfinders was predominantly you could only go PF if you were Power Edge, and then they opened up.
That's why I was going to go. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But and also, geographically where you live. Some guys. We had a good friend of mine. He came SBS, but he lives in Birmingham, and so you have limited time in UK anyway. But when you do, you want to be going home, and so he decided to transfer to the SAS purely because geographically he's only 30 minutes home rather than, so that also has a has a factor on a guy's decisions.
Yeah, no, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Yeah. So your time in the SBS, how long did you serve in the SBS?
So I did, when did I, let me work this out now. So I came out in 2011. I did selection in 2000 and end of 2005. So yeah, just under 6 years. But for me, I'd missed a tour of Afghanistan because I was on the training team at Limston. So I hadn't been to Afghanistan before. But what was unique about this, we just done our hey-ho course. And so my first tour in Afghanistan with the SBS, the first time boots on the ground was the first operational jump for the SBS.
Wow.
So that was quite alley.
That's one for the memory book, isn't it?
That's one for the memory book, yeah. So that was good, and that was a good start to that tour for me. And obviously, I can't really go into details about it, but
no.
It was great. You'd spent your career, and the guys weren't any different from the guys in Recce Troop or back in the engineers. The kit was just a lot better. But you're now working alongside like-minded individuals, and the big difference is when you saw what assets you had available. It's just like, I ended up going off and doing a UAV course. I was at JTAC as well. Then did a UAV course. So we ended up getting all this brand new UAV kit, like £8 million.
Just for the purpose. I got picked up on this by some followers before. They were like, "There's so many abbreviations. Just expand on what these abbreviations are."
Yeah, this was right at the beginning. It was the unmanned air vehicle. So my sergeant major pulled me in. He's like, "Right, Stott, you got a choice. You can go on a dog handler's course or a UAV." And the dog handler's course is amazing, but this was the very first course, so I didn't have any sort of reference to see what it was. And I was like, "What's the dog handler's course?" Which we took from the SEALs. So we jump in with the dogs, they come on the ground with us. So I thought I was going to be picking up dog poop for 2 years. And I said, "Well, what's the UAV course?" And he's like, well, you go to California for 6 weeks. I was like, I'll do that one. So I ended up doing the UAV course. Yeah, we had then £8 million worth of kit got sent in because we have to have that capability, and we didn't use it. So I remember having to fly to Camp Bastion where the artillery were because they have to upload all the data. And yeah, I remember driving up the 4x4 onto the Herc, landing, and then tailgate coming down. And this sergeant major and the OC of this unit were like, "Where's everyone else?" I said, "Oh no, that's ours. That's our asset." And then, 2 weeks later, I went back to collect the kit. It's just some of the data, and we had 2 CH-47s, and they have to fly together in pairs. So I had 2 CH-47s just flying me back to Kandahar. But this sergeant major was like, "I have, I think he had 3 or 4 people who were supposed to go on R&R, and the flight was delayed." And I said, so I made a phone call back to our ops. We've got the names and numbers of these guys and girls and put them on. And flew them back. But then you sort of realize really how lucky you were with the assets that you had. These people can't even go on R&R, and you've got 2 CH-47s just flying you to pick up kit. But yeah, that was a great tour.
Yeah, when you mention about the kit, I have heard that before because prior to the Afghan and Iraq stuff, the British Army was on its arse with kit. I remember going to Afghan, one of the first Afghan tours back in 2001, and I had like green kit on in the desert because there was no money for desert kit. You remember the same sort of era?
Yeah.
there was no money at all with the army. And then obviously Afghan happened and 9/11 happened prior to that. And obviously a lot of money was injected. But I have heard that about SFs. It's like guys saying how they've got lockers for like the black roll kit, or they've got the dive kit, and they're
Yeah, you
like
got your
just
cages.
kit
Yeah.
thrown at them. And they're like, it's like boys and toys, isn't it? It's just amazing. I can imagine.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. Yeah, you have your cages, you have your black cage, your green cage. And then they're always trialing new kit. And so they start throwing new kit at you, and you just got to do a little report on it. Yeah, it was good. We were very lucky. And then obviously because of the civilian stuff we did, we then got a budget to buy civilian clothes, especially when you're doing surveillance. So you're not like wearing your own kit. So yeah, no, it was good. It was good. It was a different world. I mean, as you touched on, then the black roll, the black roll was a whole different beast completely. And again, I was very fortunate. Did another operational jump in the black roll on a hostage rescue as well. So a totally different environment. So yeah, I was ticking a lot of boxes in a short period of time, which your peers would have died for. A good friend of mine said, a Navy SEAL is like, it went from guys wanting to do these operations in their career to guys doing these operations every night. It was such a busy, I think it was the busiest time in UK and US SF history.
Unprecedented, really, wasn't it?
Yeah.
What kind of kicked off pre sort of second Iraq war from there on in, and it's only just now, kind of, for the Green Army, it's probably calmed down. I'm sure SF are still very, very active in all over the place, as we know they will be. But yeah, it's kind of bonkers, the period of time, and again, it's when you join, you had guys that joined, like you said, you touched on prior to that, could have joined in '82 and done 20 years in the military and never ever done anything other than the sort of Northern Ireland, and just the way it was. You can't help when you join, can you?
You can't. It's just that period in time. You know what I mean? It's just, no fault to them. It's just there just wasn't anything going on. But as you know, again, with the Iraq and Afghan war, that did affect recruiting for special forces, because it went from days of old where only SF were getting rounds down to fucking everyone was getting rounds down. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Yeah. So guys like, I actually don't need to go SF. Obviously we do different mission sets and operations, but that did have a little bit of an impact on recruiting. And then obviously when the conflicts subsided, then that's where, if you wanted to get that action, you need to go that way. So yeah, it did have a little bit.
How did the kind of sort of Iraq conflict affect the sort of the manpower, for want of a better word, in SF? Because I know what it did with the parachute battalions when the CP market opened up, because you'll remember the close protection market was pretty much for anyone reserved SF. It was SF guys that went into that role. It was fairly rare for sort of any other units to get a look in, really.
Yeah.
And then obviously the second Iraq war kicked off 2003, and that opened up the market. And I remember I was one of the first out in Iraq to do the close protection at 24 years of age. And I remember the parachute battalions got decimated for a period of time because guys were leaving in droves thinking, well, I'm not going to do this here for this amount of money when I can earn 4 times as much with less bullshit. So it kind of, did that have the same effect on SF as well?
I think it had impact on SF. I don't think it was as bad as what some, maybe the parachute regiment in the Marines had. But no, I was there. I passed selection past that period, because about 2004, 2005. So I didn't really know who had gone and who hadn't. But yeah, no, it had impact across the military. I had a few friends who went out and did exactly the same, just went and worked there, and it makes complete sense. They bought their houses straight out within a year. You go where the money is, and you just follow the signs. Then you got your diehard SF guys who are like, nah, I'm in. It depends what they wanted. It depends on the individual. So, but no, I don't think it had as big an impact it did on the battalions.
Yeah. So your career in the SBS came to an end, and that was a result of medical discharge, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was about to deploy again in Afghan. We were in Oman doing pre-deployment training about 2 weeks before we were about to deploy, and we had some new guys pass selection, and so they had to get hey-ho qualled. And so we were doing some jumps in Oman, and Sergeant Major's like, yeah, do some fun jumps. As you know, the military take a good sport and ruin it, like diving and parachuting and skiing.
Yeah, horrible.
And I think we've done about the third jump of the day. And normally I like to go number one in the stick and just frog it, just back into the aircraft. And then one of the guys out right in the middle of the stick now started. So I was in the middle of the stick, exited the aircraft at the tailgate, and did my compulsory count. I mean, look, and realized I was actually looking the wrong way. My leg was caught in the line above my head. And so, because it's a static line, it opens. And so I'm frantically trying to kick my leg out in time, and it didn't. It pulled my leg up over to the right, over my head and to the right. But thankfully, my heel cleared because the parachute opens. And then with hey-ho, you can travel up to, depending on the winds, up to 50 kilometers or 30 minutes in the air. But this pain, I never had pain. I knew straight away, this is bad. The pain was bad. The air was still thin. I was drifting in and out of consciousness. I was vomiting because of the pain. I had comms. I could hear the guys, but there's nothing I can do. There's no point in getting on telling them that I've hurt my leg because there's nothing we do till we landed. So, as it's the DZ. It's the landing, which is crucial. So for me, I'm like, well, I've got one bad leg. If I land bad on the good leg, it's going to be a problem. So I hovered around the area, saw the guys, saw the NATO T, saw the best approach, came in, landed one-legged. It was a good landing, but I shouted medic, and one of the guys, that was a good landing. I said, yeah, the exit wasn't. And they took me straight off to the hospital and for an MRI. I tore my ACL, my MCL, my lateral meniscus in my knee, my hamstring, my calf, and my quadricep. So all the supporting muscles.
Good job.
Yeah, so literally ruined it. And that was the same time as the Icelandic volcano, which had grounded a lot of aircraft. So the guys ended up going to Afghanistan. I ended up staying in Muscat on painkillers for 4 weeks, waiting for an Aeromed to pick me up. Got back to UK, Selly Oak, basically given 6 weeks leave, told to come back. By which time you're missing that whole crucial time of recovery at the beginning.
Rehab and surgery.
Yeah, rehab. Yeah, went back. My wife Alana said already I'd lost so much weight. Went back down there 6 weeks later. They lost my MRI scans, and so we had to. So there was a whole spiral of errors. By which time now the lads are already in Afghanistan. So I'm already going through a lot in my head. And then they're basically told, it took me 44 weeks to get an operation. I had an ACL, I had a MCL, lateral meniscus tear back on the training team at Limpton. I got operated on in 5 days and was back on the training team in 6 weeks. It took me 44 weeks to get this. So there's a whole spiral of errors in that last year, which really annoyed me. And so I had to extend another couple of months to get that. But I'd already planned, right, that, we're leaving now. So as you touched on, security seems to be the natural stepping stone. My wife was a bank manager at the time, very entrepreneurial. And she wanted to get into it. So she did her CP course, did her surveillance courses. I'd done my PS1s when I was in SF. And the plan was for us to both work together in industry. And she found out during the CP course that she was pregnant. And so, yeah, so when I left, as to add to the to the pressure, I didn't know whether there was going to be any work out there. How was I going to support her? That whole identity crisis, working in this civilian environment, which is totally new to you, and I'd lost a lot of confidence in myself, in the fact that, I got to where I was because of my physical attributes, and I couldn't even now run 50 meters without my knee giving way. But a good friend of mine, ex-9 squadron, met him at the Army Navy literally that weekend. I got out, and he said, it was May 2011, the Arab Spring, and he was working for a company called Control Risk Group, and he said, look, we're helping set up this project. I need a team leader. Can you be in on Monday? I was like, perfect. So I flew straight in. My first task was helping set up the DFID project, which is part of the British Embassy in Benghazi. But I soon identified that the Libyans didn't want it being another Afghan in Iraq. They didn't want security companies with weapons. But I was listening to these big security companies charging bigger sums for crisis management evacuation plans, which weren't actually in place. And so I came back from that trip. Alana gave birth to our daughter, and there was a huge proliferation of weapons at the time. And so I wanted to find a niche. A lot of my friends now had their own security companies, were doing the maritime stuff because Somalia was at its height now. I didn't really want to be going Afghan and Iraq on rotation. And so luckily for me, my wife, we were just doing ad hoc every time. And so I went back in to Libya, and I bought 30 weapons on the black market, and I buried them between Tunis and Egypt, and designed my own evacuation plans, put comms kit in there, put money in there. We lived in Aberdeen, which is the oil and gas capital of Europe. So I had access to the oil and gas companies and subsidiaries. I just sold them my evac plan, hopefully never needing to use it. And then, as I said, every phone call I was getting ad hoc was a different country. It was a different task. And I was learning so much about this security industry in a short period of time. You know, one example, one phone call, take the UAE royal family super yacht from Barcelona to Maldives. Like, yeah, perfect. You know, next one, I'm training the Kurdish special forces to fight ISIS. You know, next one, you're taking Citibank to Nigeria and then Nairobi. So each time it was different. I was learning a lot about it. But I just finished the London Olympics in 2012. Visa was the client, did 6 weeks in London and amazing. And I was in Benghazi, September 11th, 2012, when the American ambassador got killed. As you probably know, with the movie 13 Hours.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got a phone call to help get a German oil company out. So I with my evacuation plan, got 8 German engineers safely from Benghazi to Tripoli through safe houses that I had all the way out. And so that really put my name up there in regards to evacuations. I mean, 2 years later, I was in Brazil doing the Soccer World Cup. And I get a phone call from the Canadian embassy. It was now the Tripoli war. And they said, look, everyone's gone. We're stuck. You're the guy we need to speak to. So I flew back in and I single-handedly evacuated the Canadian embassy, 18 military and 4 diplomats from Tripoli to Tunis. And it sounds very sexy and sounds very Hollywood, but actually, you know, I didn't need any weapons. It was understanding the demographics, the politics, and the tribal influences. That's what I sort of mastered when I was going around, is having a really good network and sort of try and fly under the radar. So yeah, I did that, came back from that trip, and my wife had highlighted I'd only been home 21 days in a 365-day calendar. So I'd now disconnected from society. I didn't really realize it. I was taking these risks I was trying to match the adrenaline rush I had when I was in the special forces, without coming to terms with the fact that you'd left. You know, no one's coming to rescue you. You know, you haven't got a squadron there to back you up if it goes wrong. And so, you know, my wife, you know, chapter 16 in my book's called Dead or Divorced. You know, that was the conversation we were having at this point. 2 bottles of wine and a bottle of port. And so, you know, she had a property development business, and I just took a sabbatical from the security industry and worked with her, but soon identified that I wasn't made for that line of work. And
not many SF blokes will ever be, I don't think.
We had our second child in, my son. I was sat there feeding him. She's chatting to all these architects and plumbers and stuff. And my injured leg now was 2 kilos lighter than my good leg because of the muscle wastage. And so I just bought a push bike off Amazon. Just cycled to and from the office. It's only about 8 miles there and 8 miles back. But being physically active or cardiovascular, I felt like there was a huge weight off my shoulders. And so I said, I fancy doing a world record. It was about a month before my 40th birthday. My wife's like, what in? I said, cycling seems to be good. And so she then opened up the Guinness Book of Records and found the world's longest road, the Pan American Highways, 14,000 miles from southern Argentina to northern Alaska. So I'd only ever cycled 20 miles maximum at this point. It sounds quite arrogant. So I applied for the world record. I was like, yeah, why not? And yeah, Guinness came back 6 weeks later and said, you've been successful in the application. And so started training for that. Alana and I do a lot in the veteran space. You know, I'm an ambassador for the Royal British Legion. We were both ambassadors for the SBS Association. She does a lot in human trafficking. And so we wanted to do it for a cause. And name dropping now, Prince Harry and I were on the JTAC course together back in 2007, and we've been friends ever since. So I rang him up and I told him about this bike ride. And him and his brother and Kate were just about to launch a campaign called Heads Together, which focuses on mental health. And I'd seen firsthand in the military mental health how it affected guys, but I wasn't aware how big it was throughout the whole of society. So that was the campaign that we did it for. I set a target of £1 million. The world record was at this time was 117 days. And yeah, I set off a year, about 14 months later. Broke the world record by 17 days, became the first man in history to do it under 99 days. Took 10 days off the South America world record. But more impressively, Alana raised £930,000 for the campaign as well. So up until then, no one really knew who Dean Stott was, you know, because of your SF background.
Me included.
Yeah. And so it was then, that's when like book opportunities, TV opportunity, I didn't really think about that. I didn't do it for that. I did it so I wasn't smuggling people across borders. And so that's when people then realized who Dean Stott was. And like literally 2 days after I got back from that world record, we were invited to Harry and Meghan's wedding. So then it's that whole exposure.
As you do.
As
you
you
know,
do.
as you do. Yeah, Sam.
Yeah.
But I remember that's how I come across you, because I saw there's a documentary about it, isn't there? And these bits and bobs on YouTube and stuff like that. And I caught wind of it. And I love all things endurance and stuff like that. I've done nothing on that level, but stuff at much lowers. But I like the fascination of almost torturing yourself and testing yourself mentally, which is in effect what it is. And obviously, when I saw that, and I saw that the fact that the mileage you were covering on the days you were covering it when you were bad with the shits and stuff like that, I was just thinking, God, the mental resilience on you and the kind of your mindset is just like phenomenal. And I honestly, I am right in saying I've not made that up. There is a documentary about it, isn't there?
Yeah, we've got the footage. Yeah, we've got the footage. We've got 85 hours of raw footage. We did some short videos. But yeah, you know, obviously people were following me on social media. And I had to set up social media. The first time I ever been on social media as well. And, you know, I got into North America on day 70 and I was 14 days ahead of the world record. I'm like, perfect. You know, I got plenty of time. But then my wife rang me and told me we'd been invited to the royal wedding. And so, but I couldn't tell anyone that. And so I ended up, you know, so going into that phone call, I was 14 days ahead. You know, 10 minutes later, I'm now a day behind. I had to then go even faster. But it's because people were like, why is he even pushing it? He's smashing it. But I couldn't tell him that reason. Some people were putting 2 and 2 together. And so yeah, that almost gave me that extra motivation. And then when I got a week outside, I found out about a professional cyclist. He's sponsored by Red Bull. You know, he's about 26-year-old. He's got 3 other endurance world records. He'd come out on social media that day and said that he was going to cycle the Pan American Highway in August and be the first man to do it on 100 days. And so for me, I was like, I can carry on and smash the world record. I could just push it even harder. So I cycled for 22 hours in the last 30 hours in -18 in the snow to get in the 99 days, 12 hours and 56 minutes. So it wasn't the original plan. But I always think the success of this was, you know, it's that military background and being reactive to the situation changes on the ground. You know, I was in a good position and I just had to change the way that I cycled to come in.
Yeah, I like I say, pal, that is some accolade to have, and like to smash it by such a large margin as well. Like, you know, you're not just knocking a few minutes or a few hours off something. You're knocking
You're going for it. Yeah, no, my sponsorship marketing dean did a SWOT analysis, the strengths, the weaknesses, and the opportunities and threats. And the only weakness that came back in this whole challenge was my arrogance towards the cycling community, which I took as a strength. But and in fairness, no one from the cycling community said that. But I could see that, you know, those that do this for a living, day in, day out, endurance cycling and break world records, would be like, who's this 40-year-old, 200-pound SF guy who's never cycled before? How does he think he's going to do it? And even they reached out, as like, yeah, fair one. You know, you
fair point, mate.
Yeah.
How did your kind of bad leg hold up to that? Was it all right?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, I got the muscle mass back. My leg was fine. Strange enough, you know, you think about your gooch, you know, between your legs and your back, you think they're going to be sore. Actually, it was just pressure points on the handlebars. Constantly looking over my shoulder. I had a real like tightness in there. But the real thing that hit me was my lips. Because I went from everything from plus 47 degrees centigrade in the desert to -18 and everything in between. You know, the tropics, the rain, the storms. And so my lips were just getting blistered. So I remember coming down this hill in Ecuador and I'm just pouring down with rain and I'm trying to tuck my lips in. So yeah, the things you wouldn't think were hurting you were hurting you.
Yeah, I bet me. Like I say, I can't get my head around that. I mean, I've done 65 mile once on a bike, and that about killed me. It was killing me back. It was killing everything. So the thought of doing 200 miles. I mean, what was the furthest you did? I read somewhere that did you do 370 something mile in a day one day?
No, it wasn't one day. No, so I had when I had winds in Texas, and so I had to cycle 340 miles in the next 36 hours. But then I also used the wind to my advantage in Cheyenne and cycled 270 miles in 11 hours. Yeah, because I had a great wind. But it worked out 99 days. I had 5 days off, 3 due to weather and 2 logistics. So it averaged 147 miles a day for 94 days.
That's just bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah.
How did that start? I bet your ass was in bits, wasn't it?
It wasn't. Believe it or not, it wasn't. Yeah, I'd done some research on saddles and what was the best one, and so no, it really wasn't. Yeah, it was literally the lips and my shoulder.
Yeah, fair one.
So yeah,
you talked about. So how did that then sort of? I don't want to say catapult you in your kind of. It sounds a bit corny, but how did that kind of help with the stuff that you kind of then moved on to? Because you got a book out. Did you bring the book out after that?
Yeah, so I got a book deal after that. I got launched in 2019. It was a different one from this. This one's launched in US. It's same sort of book, different book cover. I actually turned down a lot of media opportunities before that bike ride. I originally got asked to do SAS Who Dares Wins and be the chief instructor on that show back in 2005. But for me, I didn't really have a reference point. I messaged MOD. They told me to step away. So I phoned Ant. Could he just come out of prison? So he was struggling for work. Foxy had PTSD, so he couldn't work in the security industry. So I rang them guys up and got them onto that. So I'd already been approached about media stuff. And when I finished the bike ride, I was looking at maybe some more challenges. And, the upsetting thing is in the society today, it doesn't matter how many world records you got, how many millions you raised for society. Is that how many Instagram followers you got? Is that really? So we then moved over to America during COVID, and I then got asked if I wanted to do SAS Australia, and I turned it down before. So I did SAS Australia. I do a lot of guest speaking, still working a lot in the security industry. But 3 years ago, I then got approached by Netflix to do a show called Toughest Forces on Earth. And actually, strange enough, the reason they found me was Harry and I did a promo video together to promote the bike ride back in 2017. And one of the girls who was working for that production company was now working for this production company doing this show. And they needed someone from the Special Forces. So she said, I always remember you from the Kensington Palace. Can we put your name forward? I said, yeah, of course. So 150 names went in and it went down to me in the end. I was like, well, that's strange because I hadn't really done much TV, and they said, you look like you're the fittest. And I said, all right, so what is the concept of the show? And it basically was doing selection 8 times. I was like, what? But it wasn't like that in the end. But then Netflix came back and said, oh, we were thinking more of an American. So I then had to go to Dallas, do a chemistry test with some American guys, picked the other co-host, Ryan. And then the commissioner for the show commissioned Top Gear back in 2005 and said, it doesn't work with 2, we need 3 hosts. And so right at the 11th hour, they found this YouTuber, did 4 years in the Rangers, but, does YouTube videos about military equipment. And so he came in. So 3 totally different guys, but it's like Top Gear with guns, but you can't call it Top Gun, but it worked out really well. Yeah. So we ended up filming that over a year, which again, sort of raises your profile. But last year, October the 7th, when the Hamas incident happened in Israel, I was in Disneyland with my wife at the time, and my phone was just pinging off. And so October the 8th, I flew into Israel and evacuated 220 Americans within a few days. But the reason I mention that is I know there were people messaging me on social media. There was a couple of videos and people were like, oh, I didn't realize you were back in the security industry, but I'd never really left. So I was chatting to the head of CIA in one of the stations in one of the Middle Eastern countries a few months ago. And he goes, I've just Googled you. I said, don't Google me. He goes, because you'll see 2 Dean Stotts. The one that you see on social media is probably about 30% of what I do. 70% of what I do with my clients in security, you don't know who they are or what we do. So sort of living 2 lives, really. But yeah, that was already a catalyst that people then realized actually I was still back in the security industry.
Yeah, no, kind of like to be fair, that's news to me as well, actually, because I was unaware that you were kind of still doing the security stuff. I've obviously watched some of the kind of Netflix programs that you after we chatted a few weeks back. And I did like the first episode, in fact, when you're doing like a bit of a jungle lane. I did like the bit that you're kind of moving down this jungle lane and you said, the 2 Americans had gone down prior to you and actually put a round into the kind of unarmed kind of, and then you managed to like refrain from that. And I was like, I just saying to the lads at the fire station, I was like, was like, that's the Brits for you, train, we're the best in the world. And I'm just going off a bit like, so yeah.
It's quite good. The feedback's been great. I stuck to my guns. The production company are like, be funny, guys. I'm like, I was like, no. I said, look, what are we doing a comedy? I said, my biggest critics are my friends in the military. I'm not going to compromise my reputation to be a clown for you guys. The other hosts are the other hosts. They did what they did or whatever they do. But it came across. I'm glad I'd stuck to my guns, because everyone said, he goes, yeah, you were clearly. No, a mate of mine runs Arc'teryx Leaf. He messaged me yesterday. He said, you're clearly the better operator. And for me, you're an ambassador for not just UK SF, but the UK military. You know what I mean? And so, but even the physical, I think in the Philippines, they end up doing this lane where we have to go around, run 400 meters, get rounds down and come back. Even though I was injured, I still smashed them by 27 seconds. And I'm 47 years old. The Ranger's 28 years old. It's like, you won't let it go. You have to always be at your best.
But that's a competitive streak, and that comes back down to what we talked about early on, was your mindset that took you through the cycling, that's took you through all these kind of journeys along the way. It's a mindset, and I don't think it'll matter how old you get, you'll have that competitive streak, And I mean, at different levels. I never achieved anything like you within the military, but the mindset, I like to think, I have a very similar, within a certain extent, mindset when it comes to competitiveness. Now, I still try and go in the gym and smash the young lads, even though there's bits of me falling off. Do you know what I mean?
It's the same.
I still try.
My kids, my dad was the same with me. He wouldn't let me win, but if I won, then I knew I'd won fair and square.
Yeah.
I'm the same with my kids. You know what I mean? If they beat me, they beat me fair and square.
Yeah. No, fair play, pal. So what have you got up and coming now? What's next in the pipeline? Anything you can?
Yeah. So we obviously still doing a lot in the security with a lot of clients, especially in the family office space. But my wife got awarded the MBE last year from King Charles for her services to human trafficking and vulnerable women. She's also got a business book, How to Ask for Money. She's very good in that corporate world. And so works a lot in the non-profit space. I was fortunate this year to get the MBE for my services to sport and humanitarian for the evacuations and mental health, actually. And so it's just the right time. We've now set up an organization called Blue Rose Foundation, which is going to be combating human trafficking. And there's 3 elements to that. One element is the education. So my wife, when she was back in UK, for the National Crime Agency, used to train child exploitation online protection. So there'll be apps and websites for that to train them. And then I'll be heading the task force, and task force will have 3 elements. There'll be the homeland here in the US. There'll be international stuff. And then there'll be a QRF for Israel, Haiti, earthquake, things like that, where I can have a pool of guys that can deploy at a moment's notice and obviously help with the human trafficking. I mean, the third element is the rehabilitation with plant medicines down in South and Central America. So that's literally just launched in the last 2 weeks, and you're probably the first person to hear that. So that's where mine and my wife's focus will be, as well as still running the security projects that we have.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot going off and a lot of fingers in a lot of pies, pal. So fair play to you. Keep yourself busy.
Yeah, I think you need to keep busy. Something you said earlier about keeping fit. I have an analogy that your body's like a flowing river. It needs to keep flowing. As soon as you stop, you get stagnant ponds. There's illness and things like that. So for me, you always have to keep moving or have something to aspire to. But for me, in the past, it's trying to control the flow of the river. It's not a grade 6 waterfall. It doesn't have to be 110% as long as it keeps moving. So yeah, that's for me. As long as I can keep moving, as long as I can stay physically fit. In fact, another thing I forgot to mention, I'm just about to launch a military fitness app, probably in the beginning of next year. So I've just started a 12-week cut for that. And the reason for that is a lot of people, especially post Netflix, were like, how's he smashing these young guys still? And he's 47 years old. And although I'm quite big, I've never done body weight before. I've never done weights before. Everything I've done is body weight. So I've never bench pressed, never curled. And as you know, when you go on these courses in the military, you get tested on body weight. You get tested on how many pull-ups, dips. It's not about how much you can bench press and curl. And then also you need to be remain in shape for the job. I remember in Kosovo bumping into some US Marine Corps guys, and they were like Hollywood stars. They were huge. These guys looked good. But then when on the ground, they struggled with weight on their back, and they couldn't climb the rope into the helicopter. So for me, it was a balance of passing the courses or passing the entrance tests, aesthetically still looking good and feeling good, but then also being able to perform your role as well. And so, consolidating all that into a fitness app.
Well, the kind of the key there is the functional fitness, isn't it? And that's being functional for role. And I don't know if you've seen my coach Mike Chadwick. He's doing quite a lot of stuff. He came on the podcast a few weeks back, and he's kind of revolutionising a lot of the training for the military and stuff, and making it, I think, more functional rather than being just like stick on a pair of boots and a pair of shorts and be sure, because it does no good for anyone, and you suffer in later life through them kind of things,
True, yeah, very true. Like when I was at gym back in PTI back in Germany, stretches we were doing then, probably all illegal now,
Stretching, what's that? It was usually a can in the shower or something.
No, I didn't do that. I used to tell him it's cool, warm up and cool down. Never did it myself. I remember one day doing 4 CFTs back to back. Just picked the next squadron up and just did that. It was like, what we do.
Reaping the benefits now, I suspect.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but no, look, it's been an absolute pleasure. If you can just put Prince Harry in touch with me now for a podcast, we'll be absolutely sound, mate. That should work well. But no, look, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you, pal. I'll have a quick chat with you when I stop the recording. But honestly, like I said, your mindset and stuff that you're kind of putting out there and the documentaries and your causes that you're supporting and stuff, I have a lot of respect for that, mate. So again, thank you very much. Thanks for making the time. And I hope to keep in touch with you and, carry on doing what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do it again.
Bless you, pal. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Benji.